What's up everybody, it is Kellen here from Start Your Systems and welcome back to Monster Energy Supercross 3, the official video game where today I'm going to be playing a custom replica of the 2020 Salt Lake City 1 Supercross Round 11 of the Monster Energy AMA Supercross Championship, a replica of this track that we just saw on Sunday that threw together in game. Just tried to kind of recreate the track. I know I already kind of did a replica and kind of did a preview video talking about it. But I wanted to recreate the track a little bit closer to what it actually raced like in real life so that when I talk about kind of recapping the race from the weekend, we actually have a nice, fresh, and similar looking track to talk about the weekend with. And I'll talk about the track a little bit, but of course, just kind of giving you guys a heads up that this is a spoiler alert. As always, I'm going to be talking about results and some of my thoughts and opinions from the race weekend and all the things that kind of went into it. I think a lot of people that are here for this video have probably been there and done that and kind of know that this is exactly what the format's going to be, but I always try to let people know, especially because this weekend it seemed like there was some trouble. People were trying to watch it and there was news breaks and other things that were kind of jumping in between the broadcasts and stuff like that. But we are back racing. Round 11 has now gone and finished in the Monster Energy Supercross season, and somehow, some way, we actually got racing back started relatively quickly. I mean, 85 days sounds like a long time, but when you really look at the timeline of events and the way everything panned out, and the fact that we're still not 100% certain that outdoors is a-okay and ready to go, it's pretty amazing that they were able to get this all together and actually get an event ran. So that's cool, and we're supposed to have another one Wednesday. But in the 450 class for this Salt Lake City round number 1, we got, I think, kind of like a good refresher of the series, I guess. The beginning of the race was great, I thought, but it very quickly kind of divulged into a snoozer, I would say. Not so much like it was boring, but it just was... It was kind of boring, to be fair. But the beginning of the race was great. Blake Baggett gets the whole shot, leads the way early on. Second lap of the race, Cian Cirulo goes down and gets kind of ran over by Cooper Webb. And there's not really any good footage of it, but from what I gathered, just kind of from hearsay and some of the stories I've heard, was he didn't get the rhythm section clean and he was trying to go 2-2-2 and then quad out. And the last two, he kind of nose picked the landing of the double before the quad, and he just got off balance and kind of fell. The reality is, if you watch the fall in slow motion or even in fast speed, it wasn't that gnarly of a crash. He just kind of landed and fell off the side of the bike. But obviously the brutal part of it was Cooper Webb ran him over. And AC released an update on his Instagram only an hour or two after the race. It wasn't that long, where he basically said, yeah, he's a little bit banged up, but he got all checked out by the Alpine Stars medical unit. And no broken bones, no internal injuries, at least that he was aware of at the moment. And just going to try to kind of rest and get ready for Wednesday at this point. So that's good to hear that he's not down and out for the count right off the get-go, because he got a great start. He was fast all day, definitely competitive, and it would have been great to see him continue on in this series. So it looks like we still will. But after that, it really kind of turned into this pseudo-championship contender battle, I would say, between Eli Tomac, Cooper Webb, and Ken Roczen. Now, people will say, oh, Cooper Webb's out of the championship, idiot. He's not even that close. But the reality is any one of these guys could have a bad race and suddenly Webb's back in this. So let's hold the horses just a tiny bit there. Yes, he's pretty far down, pretty unlikely he gets into this, but he clearly still has the speed to be, at least in discussion for at the very least race victories, if not, some level of championship discussion. But the battle did feature, this Roczen-Tomac dynamic that we've been kind of longing for since Daytona. All the while, Baggett's out front, kind of cruising, not really pulling away, but just running the same pace as the guys behind him. And it's like, holy smokes, Blake Baggett, is kind of just managing this race no problem. So the early things that started happening was, first of all, they all caught up to the back of Justin Brayton, who was in second. And Tomac was the first one there, and he started trying to make a couple moves on Brayton, and then he had a small bobble, and it kind of seemed to throw his entire momentum off for a couple laps. It wasn't, he didn't have a huge moment. It was a little bit of a moment, but it wasn't you know, like we saw later in the race with Ken Roczen. But he had a moment, and Webb was able to capitalize on it and pass him. And then it almost seemed like Tomac was just maybe regrouping, or he just kind of went in defensive mode for a quick couple laps. But Roczen also kind of just quickly ate him up and passed him as well. And pretty quickly it seemed like Roczen was going to start going after Webb for second, and they still, or I'm sorry, that was third at the time because Brayton was still second, but they were not that far behind the leaders. Baggett was only a couple seconds out in front, and you were like, man, this is kind of gnarly. Like, this is Eli Tomac not looking his usual self, and Webb and Roczen both running really good pace early in this main event, but you almost got the sense that all of them were biding their time a little bit, and Tomac definitely was biding his time, because after he regrouped, took him a couple laps to regroup, he turned the afterburners on, typical Tomac style, kind of went beast mode on us, and pretty much just ran down everybody. I think the first one that he got was Roczen, and then he I think like they all went around Brayton at the exact same time. Like, Brayton just moved out of the way in the first turn, and like they all went around him. It was kind of a weird situation. But anyway, they all moved by him. Eventually, Tomac got up in a second, and he was about 2.5 seconds behind Baggett. But literally 2 laps later, he was on Baggett for the lead. And I think Baggett led 10 laps or so of the main event, and Tomac led the rest, which I think is 27-lap main event or something like that. Crazy long main event, or it felt that way because of how many laps they did, but it was such a short lap time. And Tomac passed Baggett and set sail out front with over half the race left to go, and those guys started having to try to chase quickly. So Webb, within a couple laps, got around Baggett, and Roczen was pretty soon to follow suit, and they all three kind of just, I guess, stayed the same distance apart from each other, which is actually, I think, a testament to 2020 Eli Tomac, because I would think in the past, like if we go back and look at some of Eli Tomac's races where he got the lead in that kind of fashion that early in the race, he either takes the lead there and runs away with like a 20-second win, or he takes the lead there and while he is pulling away with a big gap out front, that is when he has like the weird kind of, the brain shuts off for a moment, he has a little bit of a brain fart moment, and either crashes or something weird happens. And it just has always kind of happened with Eli. But I felt like this was a very mature ride for Eli. Like, you could almost get the sense that he felt he was overriding the track when he took the lead, and he continued that pace, but he was like drawing it back slowly but surely. And if you watched him later in the race, it really didn't seem like he was trying that hard, I would say. Like, he clearly was putting in good lap times and keeping Webb at bay, but it did seem like Webb was like still in that frantic, I gotta go catch Eli kind of pace with the last 10 laps to go or so. And Eli was more or less in cruise control, and he was going around some lap traffic and a couple other things that were still in his way. So there was, a couple moments that it was like, ooh, this is a little close. But it just was a really well-managed race, I thought, from Eli. Like, it was a great kind of like decision, I guess, to turn it on when he did, because he kind of caught all those guys by surprise. By the time he got into the lead, they were all trying to react to what he had done, and it was like kind of too late almost, because they were falling behind him too quickly. And once he settled into a groove and a pace, they couldn't quite match it to go catch him and kind of ruffle his feathers or anything like that. So just a really good measured ride from Eli, and I think that is more dangerous than anything. Like, the speed has always been there. I'm not worried about speed with Eli Tomac, and clearly he knows how to manage coming from the back or with a good start or whatever, but it's that second half of the race, kind of late race mentality that seemed to bite him before, and he looks different this year to me at least. I don't know, like, some people may think like, don't worry, it's still coming, and it may, where there's still 6 rounds of this thing left where Eli could have a weird night, or he could have a bad start or whatever. Roczen is only 8 points down. I know that's, he lost a lot of points technically today or yesterday, whatever you want to call it, in the championship, but it's not, it's not like it's a dire situation for Eli where it was, oh, he had to come from way back and he just got to those guys. No, he started up front and he kind of had a weirdo moment at the beginning, but settled into a pace and immediately started clicking those guys off like it's nobody's business. So I would be pretty scared of Eli right now, and if I were Roxon or Webb, I'd be doing just about everything to knock his confidence back with these 6 rounds to go. Like, if you're coming into Wednesday's race and you think you still have a shot at this title, obviously Roxon definitely believes that, and Webb probably still does, even though it's a long shot. You got to do something to knock the confidence back. You got to make him think twice, have a bad start, know that you're going to ruffle his feathers, something like that, because right now that guy just looks like he's in a complete comfort zone in a stadium that he's probably pretty comfortable in. So, you know, he's just going to probably take with it and be comfortable from there. But we'll see. Still a lot of racing left to go. But as I mentioned, though, late in the race, Roxon had a huge moment, and he's very lucky, I think, to still have finished on the podium, but I think he's honestly pretty lucky to not have DNF'd, because in this rhythm section I'm going through right here, he went over the table at the beginning and then cross-rutted and hooked a little hard to the right on the next triple face and landed, I mean, about as on top of tough blocks as you can get. He basically rode over 3 tough blocks at speed, which is a pretty tough thing to do, and still landed back on the racetrack. Like, you talk about things falling your way, like, and we talked about it with Cooper Webb last year a lot, where there was just certain things that would happen that you're like, man, Cooper Webb, he's just kind of got this like lucky 8-ball, magic 8-ball rolling his way quite often. That is he got a little bit lucky there kind of moment for Ken Roxon. He's very talented and able to pull that back together and not crash there. You know, he could have done the, oh, I'm screwed because I'm landing in the tough blocks, let me just let go of the bike and yard it up here. But he held on as hard as he could and pulled that thing back onto the racetrack. So there's definitely a lot of talent there, but you don't usually land on tough blocks like that and ride out of it that smooth. So he probably, you know, had a bit of a hardened stomach kind of moment there, and you could definitely tell like the last lap and a half he was kind of rolling around and he had 3rd place locked up, so there's no point. But yeah, definitely got to count the lucky stars there if you're Kenny, because that was a big one almost. Before I jump into the 250 discussion, though, I did want to talk about this racetrack a little bit and some of the things that you know, we picked up on. So they are going to change the track. Like I've talked about this in some of my other videos, but if you haven't listened to those, obviously you don't know this. But yeah, they're going to change the tracks. It's not going to be completely different. The lanes are probably going to be pretty similar from this round to the next round. But at some point, they're going to try to keep moving stuff around, doing some different things. I think they're eventually going to go outside of the stadium. If you look at some of the stadium overheads that we've already been posting and stuff like that, there's dirt outside of the stadium at the perimeter of the like end zone grandstands that they have there. So they were going to go outside of the stadium for the finale anyway. I'd have to imagine they're probably going to do it at least for the finale again, if not some other rounds. So they're going to mess with the track a little bit. How much, we really can't say just yet, but I'm assuming they're going to have a different layout to some degree on Wednesday and a pretty different layout by next Sunday. So track changes are coming, and thank heaven. There was, you know, rumors floating around that they made the first round back kind of easier, a little bit simpler for guys so that it wasn't like a crash fest galore. But interestingly enough, there was DNFs everywhere. I think part of it had to do with some bike problems. I know a lot of people were dealing with like the rocky surfaces, and I think a couple of people broke some spokes. Some people got some flats and stuff like that. But this dirt is atrocious. Like, it's rocky, it's hard, it's going to be a pain in the butt for this Dirtworks crew to work with and manage and try to get stuff set up every week. And, you know, hopefully they can make it kind of work. But we'll have to see, because I was not a big fan of this track. This track was very tame, very boring. Didn't seem like, other than the first 2 rhythm lanes developing a lot of really rutted transitions and kind of like a sharp transition, not really a smooth flow from each jump to jump. It's kind of like these almost kind of like speed bump transitions for all of them. You know, I really hope they make a much more technical track this Wednesday, if not maybe this Sunday, because I was not a fan of this racetrack one bit. It was a snoozer, didn't like it, and yeah, looking for more out of the Dirtworks crew. Anyway, on to the 250 class. Yeah, this is suddenly a championship again. I mean, not that it wasn't, but I really felt like after Daytona, it was really swinging the momentum towards Chase Sexton. Shane McElrath has always been historically very good at the start of championships. He's won a lot of the first round or 2 or 3 of the championship, held the red plate for a while, but he just never seems to really finish and get those last couple rounds that he needs. And he has a bad round here or there that really limits his championship possibilities. And it seemed like that trend was kind of continuing when we were at Daytona, not because McElrath had like a off night. He had Jordan Smith run into him in the 4th corner of the main event, and they both went down and he had to fight back. But it just seemed like Sexton had this championship level about him. Yeah, Marchbanks won Daytona, but Sexton rode mature. He didn't over push it. He tried to go win the race, realized he couldn't, settled for 2nd, and that, for his age and still just trying to learn the ropes and everything like that, that's pretty mature ride for someone like that. So I was kind of thinking like, man, how are you going to knock this guy's confidence back so that he knows that you're still in this championship fight? And I would think that McElrath needed to win Indy to do something about that kind of confidence level. And we never got Indy, but now we have round 11 anyway at Salt Lake City. And McElrath was fantastic. They both rode incredibly well. They lapped past 5th, so only the top 4 riders were still on the lead lap. I'll get to that story in a second. But they were on another level, really. I mean, Marchbanks tried to keep him somewhat close. I think he ended about 14 seconds back of them. But Sexton was clearly kind of the only guy in the same zip code as McElrath most of the day. And I almost think that if Sexton had started in front of McElrath, he might have beat him. Like, that's how close in times they were and pace and everything like that. I'd say that you get a fair start where they come out of the first couple corners neck and neck and they're 1 and 2 or something like that. That's going to be a great race because they both seem like they speed-wise are pretty similar. But clearly, I think McElrath benefited huge from this break because he did get that refresher. He did come into this almost as if it was the first round of the season again, a lot like he has for these last couple of years where he's won the openers and things like that. And yeah, now we have a championship. 7 points in it. Sexton still has the points lead. They're going to go this Wednesday and this Sunday before having the entire full week off after that for rounds 14 and 15 when it'll be West again. But that's a momentum shift, I feel like, for McElrath. Like, that was, you were looking a little bit off your game, just not able to kind of compete, I guess, in the previous 2 rounds in Atlanta and Daytona. And now he clearly looks like he still has that same speed he had at Tampa. Now he's just got to figure out how to carry it forward. Sexton still has the points lead. Sexton still is the guy that he needs to beat consistently every week. So if Sexton comes out and wins on Wednesday night, that's a kind of big deflator, I would say, to this push that McElrath has, because at the very least, if he can win next week, get it within a couple points, maybe even take the points lead if Sexton has a weird off night, you're suddenly looking at really just a completely different shift in momentum in this championship that I kind of didn't see coming, because I really did feel like Sexton had this thing fairly under control. Even though it was only 4 rounds in, he just seemed like he knew what he was doing and knew what he wanted and knew how he's going to get it. Now, that being said, despite finishing second, Sexton on the podium was very much like I don't want to say, like, cocky's not the right word, but it was a little bit where he was like, I think Daniel Blair asked him something along the lines of, like, what do you have to do next to catch or, run the pace that Shane was running or something like that. And Sexton was pretty much just like, I was running his pace. Like, I felt like I caught him. I felt like I could run his pace if I got to him. I just couldn't quite get to him. And he didn't seem worried. It didn't seem like he was sweating it at all. So, in one sense, yeah, McElrath did switch the momentum for him, but it doesn't seem to me like Sexton was worried about it. Like, he was just like, yeah, I got second this round. I couldn't quite get to him. We were both running a ridiculous pace. I'll get him next week. Like, and that's big, because that's like the championship mentality these guys got to have. I know it probably sounds cocky and you have an attitude and all this stuff like that, but every single one of the champions throughout our history have had that mentality. I guarantee you Eli Tomac and Ken Roczen have that mentality about each other. They probably don't publicly say it, but I probably think Eli, when he loses to Ken, goes, I just, maybe I wasn't as fast tonight, but I'm probably fast enough every other week, so I'll go get him then. And then Kenny has to think the same way. That's how you win championships. You just have to imagine and believe in yourself that you're on that next level. Now, Sexton saying it publicly is a little bit of a different story, because it probably lights a fire under McElrath and the Star Yamaha guys, and there's a whole different kind of mind game mentality, kind of focus in how you attack the media, I guess, from that standpoint. But it was kind of bold, like, that he just came out and said, like, yeah, I think I can still run his pace. We were running that same pace, no big deal. And they were balls fast. It was insane. But Marchbanks did finish in third, so he seems like he's continuing just kind of the same momentum he had from Daytona. He was honestly about a couple tenths off a lap of those guys, and it eventually turned into like a 10 to 15 second lead. But to be as close as he was to those guys is kind of an anomaly, because everybody else in the class was not that close. J Mart, he ended up being, I think, 35 seconds down, and then Pierce Brown got lapped with, I think, a lap to go or 2 laps to go. But Pierce Brown had an entirely different main event that kind of needs a whole chapter, I would say, to talk about it. First of all, comes out of the second corner, he's in like 5th, gets into the side of Shimoda, which I think was almost like kind of his fault, because he did kind of cross over Shimoda, and it threw him sideways across the track and into Nichols. So Nichols goes down, so he gets up. I mean, definitely Pierce Brown got up dead last. Nichols and Shimoda, I believe, still got up ahead of him, and Shimoda hit the pits 2 laps later. Nichols hit the pits basically that same lap, tried to get some repairs, but Brown never went back to the pits and just rode his butt off the entire rest of the main event. And pretty incredible charge to go from 22nd, 21st, wherever he was, all the way up to 5th, and save my fantasy team in the process. But like, that is legit. That is, that I would say that the East Coast is not quite as stacked necessarily as the West. Just being honest, like, I feel like there's, like, I don't see Ferrandis and Faulkner, or Ferrandis and Cooper, or whatever, lapping up to 5th in the West. I'm sorry, I just don't see it, because like 5th in the West is like Alex Martin. I don't really see that. But anyway, they just lapped through everybody, and Pierce Brown rode through everybody to get to 5th. And yeah, he did end up getting lapped in the end, but I mean, he had to pass 16 guys to finish where he did. And incredible ride. Showed a lot of heart. Really impressed with, he's young. I think he's only 17, or he may have just turned 18. I think that's kind of like a big deal for only his 3rd full Supercross race, to kind of put in a ride like that and show like, hey, I have this kind of potential. I just need to get a start. And yeah, that was mental. I would say by far my rider of the night, or crazy ride of the night, whatever you want to call it, breakthrough ride of the night, definitely Pierce Brown. He rode his heart out, and that's really cool to see. Obviously bummer that Shimoda looks like he just, was kind of a misfortunate event, kind of, benefactor of that, I guess, that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, ended up going down, had to get some repairs, ended up pulling off the track, not finishing the main event. I don't know if there was more wrong with the bike, or maybe he injured himself, haven't heard officially, but I don't think he was fully hurt. He just looked like he had pulled off to the side. And then Nichols definitely looked like he had something wrong with his bike. I don't know exactly what it was, but he got on almost 2 laps down. Eventually, I think did go 2 laps down, but he finished like 15th or so. And kind of a bummer way to come back, but good to see that he was able to finish it up, and seems like he'll be healthy for kind of everything moving forward. But yeah, championship fight in the 250 class got, I think, more interesting. Championship fight in the 450 class may have got less interesting, but we're back racing, people. Like, we got to be excited for that. It's so good to see racing again. It's weird without the fans. It was weird with the the protocols and all that stuff like that. They have to do that. They have to at least appear like they're trying hard to be diligent about all that stuff, or else that is a huge no-no for all the local government officials to say like, oh, we're going to shut this down, blah, blah, blah. So they're trying their best to make it appear like they are trying their hardest to be peachy keen and follow all the protocols. And hey, if that's what they got to do to get us racing again, I'm all for it, because let's get some racing in. Let's finish up this Supercross season. Let's get it actually done, so we have something to talk about again. it's good. I know people were bummed that the TV broadcast was a little messed up, and the racing itself was kind of weird, and track kind of sucked, and everybody has something to complain about as always, but I'm just happy we're racing again. So yeah, we're gonna have another recap video of Salt Lake City 2 coming out Thursday after the Wednesday race this week. It's kind of crazy to think that like just as soon as we're done talking about this race, they're already prepping and getting ready to basically start the next race here. It's gonna come at us quick. It's gonna be a lot of races in quick succession, but I'm all for it. I'm all buckled in and ready to go for the next couple weeks, and hope you guys are too. But again, really appreciate you guys stopping by, watching another video here. Hope you enjoyed my recap discussion as always, and I guess we'll see you guys in the next one. All right then, so long for now.